Now, there is something to be said for the fact that this offensive line, as maligned as it is and as maligned as it deserves to be, because they cannot pass protect. They can't do it. Everybody, save for Pooney, has anchoring issues on that offensive line right now. We're just talking about the healthy guys. When Banks comes back, then we can have a bit of a conversation there. But you have an anchoring issue at left tackle, right tackle, center, and left guard if it's Nick Sakelj, and we'll see if Banks can get back in there. And then you have a mobility issue with Pooney at right guard. So you're running basic zone stuff, which is all they ran in the preseason, understandably. But, man, I'm not sure that we need to be I can see why the 49ers rolled over.
I thought you were getting emotional there for a second.
No, I'm
I thought you were going to be one of these.
No, it's the pregnant pause there, Larry.
I can't. I get
very passionate. I get passionate about offensive line play, Larry.
I want to say I can't. I won't.
This offensive line is not good, Larry, and
I agree with this one. They're going to regret losing Kingston. I agree with Woodpit 420.
I thought that was interesting with Lynch.
Good.
First off, I asked Lynch a question at the end of the presser saying, hey, a couple of days ago, Kyle came up to the dais and said, listen, we don't know what's going on with Feliciano. It looks like he's going to be injured, and we're going to have to IR designate him. And we just sort of marked that down. So now the Niners had 2 IR designated guys, one in Kalia Davis, and the other one was going to be Feliciano. And that would allow them to get 55 guys through the roster because you can now use 2 IR designations in the preseason, and that those guys don't count against your 53. And then when they did the roster cut down, they kept Feliciano on the 53-man active roster. And I asked specifically John Lynch, why? Why'd you do that? And Lynch, tipping his hand on what would come down in an email about 10 minutes later, after he lied to Matt Mayoko and said they hadn't done any moves on the 53-man that day, we all got an email saying, actually, we did 3. Regardless,
it's lying season.
You would think that you'd want to curry up some favor given the Trent Williams situation, given the Brandon Ayuk situation, but that's not John Lynch's prerogative at the moment. And regardless, when he said it, he goes, well, we would have had to put him on the 53 anyway. Well, that's just not true. Well, they put Feliciano on the IR. And I think it's interesting that they did those moves in that success. I think that they just weren't into Kingston as we were. I think that they thought Kingston's only going to be a guard. I think a lot of people
had a guard. I think they just how he would slip through waivers. He's a guard.
Yeah.
Who's kind of top heavy. Doesn't really have big legs. He looks kind of like a skinny legged.
He was a project. It was kind of ridiculous.
But he's aggressive and he was tough. I liked him. I thought he looked good in the preseason.
I don't disagree.
I wish
with
they kept him.
And I wish they would have kept him too, but I think that we were higher on him because we project more than they did, and they're trying to figure out how they can win games this year. And I don't think anybody, even the most optimistic person, could say that Jarrett Kingston was going to help them win games in 2024. Now, 25, 26, sure. That's a conversation worth happening. And they've dicked around with that stuff with Nick Sakelj for years. And it might have finally paid off this year. But they just weren't as high on Kingston as everybody else seemed to be. And we're going to find out who's right and who's wrong on that one. But they did not feel an incentive to take what could have been a pretty easy route and keep Jarrett Kingston around. You get 8 IR designations throughout the season, and they decided that cutting Jarrett Kingston was a better option than using up one of those to get you to 6 remaining going into the year. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I know what I would have done, which is keep the guy you just drafted in the 6th round who did show some promise, who I think could have been a pretty good guard for you, especially when you know that Aaron Banks is probably gone at the end of the year. You might want some depth there. You might want some depth just given the state of the team currently. But they decided not to do that. As for Schrader, obviously it hurts me as I wear my Missouri Tigers quarter zip, as I bask in the glory of another Missouri victory tonight. But we saw what he was in the preseason. He was awesome in practice. He was exciting. Obviously, everyone liked the guy, if nothing else, because he was sort of the Rudy of the team. And, guy who was in Truman State and then just is all heart and He was great running back for Mizzou, but he just did not produce in games. He was missing clear running lanes again and again. And it just became obvious at a certain point, like you can't keep him around because he's not going to help you on special teams the way that a Patrick Taylor can. And that's why Patrick Taylor's around. JP Mason's now the number 2 back. You can't use him on special teams anymore. So you got to make sure that you have a special teams guy. Could have been a lot of dudes on the roster, but Patrick Taylor's a pretty good special teams guy, and they're going to need a gunner.
I thought the Niner O-line was disappointing this summer as far as opening holes.
No doubt.
I think Schrader he's nice, but he just doesn't push the pile. I mean, he's too small. He's just too small. Yeah, he's just too small. I mean, you need guys that are going to push the pile. Like the guy we just were talking about from Vandy.
Yeah, Keyshawn Vaughn could do it, man. He's a really good player.
He's got a lot more thump and a lot more heft. And I just think
doesn't that say a lot, though, Larry, that you can just find Keyshawn Vaughn on the street and you plug him in and it starts and it looks okay. And meanwhile, you're trying to justify. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm the one projecting this. But you're trying to justify a Cody Schrader when you can just get a Keyshawn Vaughn for free. You can put him on your practice squad. Come on now.
And it was probably a pretty shrewd move by McVay to try to take a heady player that he may feel like he can steal some info on the Niners from as well. I also feel like he's a good backup to Corum because I think he's very similar to Corum. I interviewed Drake Nugent today.
Love the
and
Nuge.
We've been joking about the Nuge.
Love the Nuge.
But I think this is one of the reasons also that they weren't as worried about Kingston because you only have so many spots. And this kid played incredible. According to Coach Yak, he put Nugent's PFF numbers up the other day, preseason. 56 pass blocking opportunities, 1 pressure, 0 quarterback hits, 0 sacks allowed, 99.1 pass blocking efficiency for Nugent. He's 6'1", about 290. But he's not, it's not like he's
a spectacular loaf. I mean, he is as deep as he is tall as he is wide. He's cube.
Broad. He's a very broad player, but he's smart.
He's what I want a center to look like.
Yeah, and I talked to him today, man, and he's like, yeah, I've got work to do, and this and that, but I do feel like I had a good summer. I did feel like I did well in the preseason. I am glad to be here. I think they really lucked out. I think that's a player that could be a player of note at some point. And I think Nugent is maybe the reason that they're not as worried about losing. They also were loaded at center. They got Brendel and they got Barch and they got Pooney and they got all these different guys that can play center. So I just
Zakelj is their backup.
Yeah, Zakelj, made it.
He had 2 good preseason games. I mean, I'm not a Zakelj fan, but I thought he was really good against the Saints, and he was outstanding both at guard and at center against the Raiders.
He's a good paper prospect. He's very big and smart and tough. Like he's 6'6", 320, and he's a very smart kid. He went to Fordham.
Yep.
So,
Go Rams.
Intellect is an underrated aspect of being a pro football player, especially on the
interior line. Interior line, especially. It's interesting with the PFF numbers, and I don't dispute them because I watch the same stuff. I don't know if I put a number on it, but clearly the Nuge was winning again and again and again when he was playing at center specifically. They tried him at guard early in camp, and he was getting his ass kicked at guard. He's not built for it. He's not big enough for guard, which is somewhat of a strange thing to say, but welcome to the new NFL. But it's center where being low is an asset. And having that Weeble kind of center of gravity is an asset. He's been magnificent as a run blocker. It's interesting that his pass blocking numbers reflected so well on him because I would say the biggest issue for him right now and the reason that he didn't make this team, and frankly, the reason that he's not the starting center for the San Francisco 49ers today, given all the problems that we saw with Jake Brendel in camp, and that there was times when you go, why don't you just go with the kid? Right? Like this guy's as good, if not better. The reason is there's no anchor. There's no anchor. And he got I just saw him at the bottom of a pile a lot during training camp. And when you're going up against third, fourth,
Nugent, or you talking about
the
Kingston?
Nuge, yeah. And Kingston actually,
he's a stronger guy.
And
a little bit more upper body.
And he's scrappy. He's got a little scrap to him. He actually kind of reminded me a lot of Colton McKivitz when they played McKivitz at guard. And I liked McKivitz at guard. Regardless, Nugent needs a year He needs a year because I think they can get that. I think he has the physical skill set and certainly the intelligence to get himself in a position to where he can be an average guy on the pass block with the anchor, that he can get his footwork to the point where he can make up for some of the deficiencies that were just put on display again and again and again during practices, not during the games. I think he's the starting center next year. I think he's the starting center for years to come. There's very few centers in the league that are elite at both run blocking and pass blocking. In fact, I would argue there's only one that's great at both, and he just got paid a ton of money in Kansas City. It's Creed Humphrey. Everybody else, you're picking one or the other. And with the Nuge, I think you can get the pass blocking to the point where that run blocking can really shine and you're passable as a pass blocker, no pun intended. And if that's the case, then they're in really, really good shape. Can't play him at guard, can't move him around the line. I don't think that's a problem if you give him a year and going into next year, we'll give him some competition, but it's his job to lose. And I think he'll take it and he'll run with it, and that they're going to be set up for the long run, or at least the short-term long run with the Nuge at center. I've been bullish on him since I first saw him, and I see no reason to get off the train now.
I think they've got 2/5 of their offensive line in this draft, or in this draft cycle, with Nugent being one and Pooney being the other.